to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before.
As the episode begins, Captain Picard falls asleep in his quarters just as an alien object appears and beams him away. He finds himself in a room with two other people with no idea how he arrived there. Meanwhile, back on the Enterprise, the crew investigates the strange energy reading from the captain's quarters, only to find Picard there, with nothing seemingly amiss. In the cell, Picard gets to know his fellow captives, Cadet Matina Harrow, a Bolian, and Kova Thol, a Mizarian, a race known for pacifism and collaboration with conquerors. As Picard attempts to communicate with their captors and determine why they were abducted, a fourth prisoner materializes, Esok of the planet Chalnoth, a world with no government or laws. When it is revealed that Esok is unable to eat the only available sustenance, the group suddenly finds itself under a time limit for escape.
How long can you go without food?
3 days. Perhaps 4.
No longer.
No longer.
Picard, Harrow, and Esok attempt to open the door while Thol refuses to assist. Their attempts to escape, however, prove to be fruitless. The four captives begin to suspect one another, and when Cadet Harrow slips up by revealing her knowledge of something she shouldn't know about, Picard discovers the truth. She is an imposter. Picard deduces that they are all part of an experiment designed to observe reactions to authority. He accuses the false cadet and ends the experiment.
I'm not playing any further. I'm quitting this game. As far as I am concerned, this experiment is over.
You are correct, Captain Picard.
Back on the Enterprise, the Picard doppelganger begins showing signs of odd behavior. He takes the Enterprise off of its previous mission, instead heading towards a random pulsar at a leisurely warp 2, and asks odd questions of his senior staff. He even asks Beverly Crusher on a date, which results in a very awkward evening. When the false captain leads the crew in a rousing drinking song in 10 Forward, the senior officer's suspicions come to a head.
What's the captain up to? That's not the captain I know.
They realize they do not have enough evidence to commit mutiny, instead deciding to see where Picard leads them. When he takes the ship dangerously close to the pulsar, endangering the lives of the crew, Riker attempts to seize command. The real Captain Picard is returned to the Enterprise, where he surreptitiously commands his crew to imprison the alien beings. They are warned to cease their experiments on sentient lifeforms and sent on their way, as Picard orders the ship back on her original mission.
Now get off my ship.
Allegiance finds itself in the 3rd season of TNG, believed by many to be the year that the show finally found itself. As such, it is surrounded by many great episodes. Yesterday's Enterprise aired just a few weeks before, and Allegiance was immediately preceded by the very strong Sins of the Father. That said, Allegiance isn't a bad episode at all. In fact, in many ways, it's actually pretty good. It's just not quite great. The episode makes use of a fairly standard trope of Trek, aliens who seem very powerful experimenting on the crew or imprisoning characters to perform tests on them. However, this isn't necessarily a failing. Sure, we've seen these ideas in Trek before, but the execution here is actually pretty good. Think of it as archetypal Star Trek, but not in an overused way, just a familiar way. I feel like the exploits of the doppelganger Picard on the Enterprise is probably the weakest part of the episode, but it's clear that Patrick Stewart relishes being able to stretch his acting chops and do something a little different. It's also important to note the iconic sing-along scene in 10 Forward that has become a staple of TNG internet mashups and parodies.
Here's to the finest crew in Starfleet.
If the story fails anywhere, I think it's when it becomes clear that the story has forgotten its main conceit. If the aliens truly wanted to study authority, why make the fake Picard act so out of character? Their aim, ostensibly, is to see how the crew will defer or not defer to Picard when pushed, to test their loyalty to their captain. However, in the end, the crew doesn't mutiny because the Picard doppelganger has pushed them to the limits of loyalty, but rather because they rightly suspect alien influence. Probably not what the aliens are actually interested in studying. The locked room test is a bit more interesting, but my main problems with this part come from the single species trait cliché that Star Trek often falls into. All Mazarians are collaborators and pushovers, and all Chalnoth are angry, violent anarchists. I wonder what single trait Picard would assign to humanity. Somehow, I suspect he wouldn't be so reductivist with his own species. The sequence at the end of the episode as Picard non-verbally orders his crew to turn the tables on the aliens is beautifully done. It is an excellent way to reverse the course of the episode, and the quiet command that Picard has over this group of people probably did more to teach the aliens about authority than anything else in this episode. Esok's teeth. How the heck does that guy eat anything except through a straw? Although that minor joking nitpick aside, the makeup creations by Michael Westmore for this episode are actually pretty cool, and in fact this episode was nominated for an Emmy Award for makeup design. What is with this weird scene at the end? Beverly coming onto the bridge and making googly eyes at Picard is certainly an odd note to end the episode on. I honestly can't quite figure out what the writers were trying to say with this one. Leave a comment if you can figure out this scene for me, it just seems weird.
Engage.
As I said earlier, Allegiance isn't the best of TNG, but nor is it a bad episode. It's pretty middle of the road where The Next Generation is concerned. Some interesting concepts and a story that sometimes manages to leave the trail a couple of times does eventually wrap up in a satisfactory manner. Final rating for Allegiance is 3 out of 5 stars. I liked it. Well, now it's up to you. What are your thoughts on Season 3, Episode 18, Allegiance of Star Trek The Next Generation? Leave a comment with your thoughts about the episode. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit. Links to all of my social media are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.